Hi, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Dillon.
And welcome to the show where we review books and their movie adaptations. One of us reads the book before watching the movie, the other watches the movie and then reads the book, and we give you our recommendations for which order is best. And this week, this month rather, we are doing All the Pretty Horses. And I was the book boy for this go round, and so we have All the Pretty Horses, written in 1992 or published in 1992 by Cormac McCarthy, about a 16-year-old John Grady Cole upset that his mother is going to sell his grandfather's Texas ranch on which he's worked his whole life, lived and worked. Ventures to Mexico with his friend 17-year-old Lacey Rawlins to find work as cowboys. This book was a bestseller, and it won the U.S. National Book Award and National Book Critics Circle Award, and it is the first in the Border trilogy by Cormac McCarthy. And on Goodreads, it has a score of 4.01. Comes out to an 8.02 on our 10-point scale.
4.01 out of 5.
Yeah.
Cool. And then that book was written in 1992, right?
Yep.
Just 8 years later, in the year 2000, the movie version of All the Pretty Horses was released. It was directed by Billy Bob Thornton. It stars Matt Damon as John Grady Cole and Penelope Cruz as Alejandra. Cast in the role of his friend Lacey Rawlins is Henry Thomas, a.k.a. the kid from E.T., the classic 1982 sci-fi movie. Lucas Black plays Jimmy Blevins. There are supporting roles and appearances by Julio Oscar Mechoso, Sam Shepard, Bruce Dern, and Robert Patrick. The ranch owner and Alejandra's father, Hector de la Rocha, is played by Ruben Blades, a musician who just recently won a Latin Grammy for 2021's Album of the Year for his album Saul Swing.
Oh.
So that's just a fun fact
Yeah.
I found out while looking up the cast. Another fun fact is allegedly Billy Bob Thornton's original director's cut of the movie was around 2 hours and 42 minutes long. The final cut is just under 2 hours. And now for the Rotten Tomatoes scores. All the Pretty Horses, the movie, has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 32% according to critics and 42% according to the general audience.
So, having read the book first, I give the book a 9.3 out of 10 and the movie a 6.0.
Wow. I watched the movie first and then read the book. I give the movie All the Pretty Horses an 8 out of 10. And I give the book an 8.1 out of 10. Okay, now we're going to move into spoiler territory. So you have our ratings. If you haven't read the book, if you haven't watched the movie and you're worried about spoilers, skip the middle discussion section because it's going to be full of spoilers. Go to the end for our final recommendation on whether you should read it first or watch it first. We'll give you a timestamp or something like that. But if you have read this and watched the movie, or you don't care that much about specific spoilers, stick around and we're going to talk about our scores now.
All right.
Okay, so this might be some of our biggest differences. Definitely, I mean, our book scores have always been really close.
That's true. This is the furthest away our book scores have ever been.
Even though it's not
really
that
not far away.
It's just 1.2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's not huge, but
the
I think
movie...
we said last time it was bound to happen eventually,
Yeah.
where there'd be a little difference.
My guess here is the movie, and actually I was going to guess the opposite, and the Rotten Tomatoes score bear out what I thought.
Oh yeah,
that I would have thought that in my mind I rated it higher than I probably would if I had watched the movie without reading the book first. The movie, to me, I seem to enjoy it slightly more because there was so much in it that I could look for from the book. Whereas I thought that if I had just watched only the movie first,
you wouldn't get much out of it, or?
Yeah, that it would have been just like what it kind of was. It's a little bit flat and very rushed. Although maybe it wouldn't have felt as rushed
if you didn't know
if you didn't know what the book was. So maybe that's
Yeah.
why. But
the
Rotten Tomato
scores are
scores
even
are
lower than yours.
which is what I expected.
Yeah.
In my mind, I expected. Oh, I liked it a little bit better because I read the book. But most people, I would think, oh, if this would not be a good movie.
And that's what the scores reflect.
Yeah. But
so the surprise is that I'm
surprised that you rated it higher. It seems like you liked it better, maybe having not read the book first. Do you have an impression on what you think you would have liked or disliked about the movie?
I didn't think of it quite in that way. Yeah, I feel like if I'd read the book first and then watched the movie, I probably would have been disappointed by some things they left out. But the main thing I was thinking about is that after watching the movie and then reading the book, I feel like I might have enjoyed the book even more if I hadn't watched the movie first. Because it's a really faithful adaptation in a lot of ways. So much of the dialogue is pulled straight from the pages. So while reading the book, I enjoyed it. It's well written and it's really good. But I also was never on the edge of my seat, like what's going to happen next? Yeah, because I knew the general arc.
That's true. Yeah, you have the big thing being that they get arrested. Yeah. Like in the book, that's pretty huge. Like it kind of like goes off like, oh, things are going pretty fine, and then all of a sudden they're arrested basically.
Yeah. I got that surprise in the movie version because I wasn't expecting it then, but
but in the book, you don't get that. Then that's the thing about doing one or the other of an adaptation and then going to the other one is
the basics.
Yeah, the basics,
like
and you
art.
lose all the surprise with the exception potentially being Under the Skin. That we did, because they're not the same.
That's just a similar, similar themes, like totally different arc.
But I don't know what. I guess I can start with the book. I don't have necessarily a lot first to say about the book in particular. Obviously, I gave it a 9.3. Similar kind of reasoning with my Under the Skin 10.0 score. That it's hard to find things that are wrong with it, and that's kind of what I do. And then so I like the way that it's written. It's what polysyndetic writing, which is where you replace a lot of like commas and things with conjunctions and to make really long sentences. Which was apparently something that was done, I think, if I recall correctly from Wikipedia, ancient Greek way of writing, but it's also a way that Hemingway would write often, which is why it seemed familiar when I was reading it the second time, because I reread it before this, and because I had read it, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, and I liked it, but it was probably at that time the first thing I've read in that style, and I've since read some Hemingway. And that's what I was instantly reminded of this time when I read it. And I was like, oh yeah, I can see that. And I really do like that because it paints a picture in a kind of nice way. It's flowing and it keeps going
really
with the description.
Smooth, yeah. I mean, the way he writes, even in the descriptions, always paints a picture. But yeah, in terms of, I feel like I've read interviews he's done, or I've heard that McCarthy likes to avoid punctuation in general too much, blotting up the page, because he also doesn't use quotation marks ever. So dialogue is just it gets a new paragraph.
Omits a lot of apostrophes even, especially in dialogue. Don'ts and ain'ts don't usually have an apostrophe in there and stuff.
And he does it really well, because it would be hard to avoid punctuation and especially quotation marks and have it hard to follow, but it's really easy to follow. Somehow it's clear whoever's talking each time. So I agree, that's done really well.
Yeah, and I've come to like this type of novel. This is why I like it also too, is when characters' thoughts are more hidden. Like you don't get characters' thoughts in this. You just get all these actions and dialogue for the most part, and then you're left to figure out what it's
a very Hemingway thing too. It's just like almost like how a play is presented, when you just get dialogue and action. And description of things is the extra thing for a novel. But there's very few times when it'll be like a short paragraph where it's like, oh, the thing John Grady Cole likes about horses is that they're ardent-hearted and stuff like that, but it'll be really short.
And that I like how there are characters that have these long, drawn-out stories with, deep messages and lessons in them and stuff. Like how no person, or very few people would actually talk. Yeah. But I don't know. I like that. And that's actually one of the things that I noticed that at least one time, one big one that they cut out of the movie when the grand aunt has her big speech at the end. There's in the movie there's no impact to it at all. She kind of just says, okay, you gotta leave, and she's not gonna she's gonna follow what I said, and that's all she says. She doesn't go into her whole thing about the revolution and
I know all the whole thing about Mexican politics, basically. I do have, like I did with The Last Duel when I watched the movie first, I do have a list of surprises that I found while reading the book. We can get into that, but since you mentioned it, that was one of them. Is Doña Alfonso, I think her name was, the grand aunt.
I think that's right.
Yeah, it was just how much more of a character she was in the book. Like that, you get her whole backstory, what was going on with Mexican politics, how it affected her family and her, and how that informs how she thinks of women's place in the world, and how she thinks of Cole's going to be ruining Alejandra's life. But I really liked the extra scenes in the book with her in it that were cut from the movie, even things like when they played chess together. That was what I was going to say too. They just had the conversation right after that, but I could see how that wouldn't be exciting in a movie, but the subtleties of the chess match where it's he wants to go to bed, but she doesn't want him to, and he has to say yes ma'am, and let's play another game.
I mean, there's a lot of tension in those things in the book, and it's interesting to hear you say the little factoid that the original director's cut was 40 minutes longer. So maybe they filmed that. They could have filmed a lot more, and that could lead to the fact that the movie feels as rushed as it does. And the other thing I thought while watching the movie is, this could be a really good HBO series, a mini series, 6 episodes or something.
And especially since it's a trilogy, it could go into the other ones.
You could do each book as a season or something.
That would be cool.
Because you can't fit it. I don't think you could fit it into 2 hours and 40 minutes. I think you need that long time because there's so many. Because all the tension, any tense points are gone from the movie. It's who cares? It's kind of just things are always happening because they had to just put in all the events,
the big parts.
They had to just fit all the events into the movie, and in order to do that, they cut out any kind of little longer, drawn out tension periods that there were.
I mean, obviously, my scores are really similar for the movie and the book, but that's what made me give it the 0.1 upper hand to the book. Is just that. Maybe I lost some of the excitement because I watched the movie first. But it was just so much more intricately painted with the descriptions and then the tension, all the extra scenes. It's, even though the movie's so faithful that they felt similar to me, the book is, clearly better, I would say. Since we mentioned that surprise or that difference, I could get into my list of surprises because I have a lot of them.
Okay, wow,
I mean, I mentioned they're so similar, and it's one of the most faithful adaptations I've seen in a way. But I still got a long list of surprises, even if they're not huge. And the first one was that John Grady Cole is 16 years old.
Yes, I wrote that down as one of my things about the movie. Actors are too old. Because both I didn't look up how old Henry Thomas was, but he looks even older. Matt Damon was 30.
I looked that up too because in the movie I didn't even think about it because I don't think they mention their ages in the movie. I don't think they do.
Which that's a funny thing that I didn't think about what it would be like watching that for the first time because they don't mention their ages. And Blevins in the movie looks like he's probably about 16 or something.
But they think he's 12
he's 13 or at the oldest or something.
Watching the movie, I mean, I didn't think about it much because they never mentioned the ages, but I would have guessed Matt Damon.
He looks like maybe in his early to mid 20s.
I thought he would have been at least 18, maybe more like 20, because it seemed like he was. They just started out he's old enough to take over the farm. So I was like, okay, he's an adult. So I'm like, 18, maybe 20s.
That makes that very different to know that he's going around trying to do that kind of stuff when he's 16, going to the lawyer and trying to figure out what he can do. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a surprise once I got to the book, and that early on they say he's 16, and I was like, what? So Matt Damon as a 30-year-old who's supposed to be 16?
That seems like a thing that nowadays I'm glad that they are going, and they're not doing that anymore. They're finding more
they do get younger actors
as opposed to the thing they used to do where you have 30-year-old playing high school kids,
they're
which
like
is what
on
this
campus,
is,
and it's Channing Tatum or something.
Yeah.
Let's see. My next surprise was that their horses had to swim across the Rio Grande, and they took their clothes off so they wouldn't get wet.
Yeah, well, I noticed that too. I was like, okay. I mean, I kind of get it from the movie. They make a big deal about it. They're like, woo, yeah, or whatever, going across the river, running through, like it's like a foot deep in the water there.
And that was something that it stood out to me in the movie before I even read the book, because it shows them looking at the Rio Grande, and
it's huge.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, how are they going to get across?
Yeah.
And then it just cuts to them, going really fast on the horse, and they just go over it like it's a puddle. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess.
It could have been one of those things where it's like, we don't have time to show them bundling up all their stuff, and,
Yeah. And it might not be as, grand and exciting of a movie moment.
Yeah.
Although it would. I mean, if you did it right, it could be more tense.
Yeah, well, the book is, I mean, if you want to be faithful to the book, it's a quiet, excited point,
Yeah.
like it's one of those things that this isn't a blockbuster movie, action movie, that kind of, or novel, whatever, that kind of thing. It's very
like impressionistic
about it.
almost. The next one, this little one, in the book, some people tried to buy Blevins from John Grady or trade him for some wax.
Yeah, that was after he lost his clothes still, right? Like, wasn't that after he lost his clothes and his horse? He was just in Cole's shirt,
maybe one boot
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I noticed that was a really tiny thing that I noticed that they changed in the movie. Like, he did, in the book, only find one boot. And in the book, John Grady goes and tries to find his other boot. That's just, I get why that's cut, like, what's the point of that? But while Blevins in the movie is still down in the ditch, he just like has his other boot and just like tosses it. But in the book, he holds onto it, and then some point they're riding, he just drops it. Kind of like it's more of a defeated kind of, like, why do I even have this? But then they meet up with those just a group of they were like some kind of like almost like miners or something like that, harvesting up in the hills or something.
Yeah, some kind of workers, some job they were doing.
Yeah. But that they offered to buy him, and nobody else knew what they were saying. But he was just like, let's get out of here, let's get out of here, or whatever.
That one just was something that stuck out to me reading the book, and I was like, well,
there's so many of those little good parts like that. That would be.
Yeah, it definitely adds a lot more to the nuance. Okay, number 4. This one's kind of specific on my surprises. The conversation about. If you can believe in heaven without believing in hell was not at the beginning of the book. It was when they were already in Mexico, jobless, and running from the people that Blevins stole the horse back from. The movie mixed that part with an earlier scene in the book. So in the movie,
it started
out with them. Rollins and Cole sitting down talking like, oh, do you think you can believe in heaven, not hell? And then the part that is early in the book when Rollins says, can I stop you from going? And then Cole says, I'm already gone.
Yeah, that's when he's talking about leaving for Mexico. Yeah. Right? Yeah, so they mix those two together. I kind of, that was another thing that, it's a good part that they should have drawn out more when Blevins steals his horse back and goes goes off leading all the,
he chases him off in a different direction.
And they go off, and then they're going for days or whatever, and just like they're like dying of thirst, along the way. They
don't think they're gonna make it anywhere.
Yeah, that's when they have that conversation, and I think that's when they get a deer, and Rollins just gets a good shot on it, and he's just like, oh, that great shot. He's like, just lucky, or whatever. Just like, he just took his rifle and just boom, and it's just like, whoa.
They had to eat.
And that's when which they did include in the book right at that point, was they're around a campfire or something, and then you hear the coyotes. That's when in the book, in the movie they have the coyote sounds, but in the book the coyotes are there after they kill the deer. The coyote sounds, and I think the coyotes are at the scraps of the deer, the rest of the carcass. I think in the book they say that that's where they are. Actually,
that adds a lot more, because also that conversation becomes more deep, the heaven and hell thing there. Whereas in the movie, it's just like that's the catalyst for them to be like, yeah, we should go to Mexico, because I don't know. Then they add the thing where Cole is talking about like, oh, the things that he's heard about down there. He's like, oh, in Mexico, they don't fence everything off and sell it off to the oil companies. It's like, so he's thinking like, oh, the ranches are going to be heaven on earth down there in Mexico. So it's just like a different meaning in there in the movie.
Yeah.
My next surprise is that, it's kind of in that same one. In the same conversation, Rollins says, he's just about got to, referring to God looks out for people. Do you think God looks out for people? He's just about got to. I don't believe we'd make it a day otherwise. And in the movie, Matt Damon says that as Cole at the very end. It's like a narration. He's like, I would think if God looks out for people, he's just about got to. We wouldn't make it a day otherwise, and then it's like credits.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, Rollins says that at some point in the middle.
Yeah, I didn't catch that. But speaking of the narration thing, that's something that only happens a couple times, like only at the beginning and end, right?
Yeah.
But it kind of makes the movie feel different. That's a kind of thing that makes you go, oh, these are his thoughts. Right? That's a thing where you get his thoughts as his narration over the movie, which is not ever done in the book, in that way. So I think that one wasn't as bad for me because they didn't do it throughout the movie.
Yeah.
That would make it really different. But
I didn't even think about that difference. I was just noticed the structure when reading the book, because so much of the dialogue is the exact same line.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I remember that line from the movie, but it was at the end, and Matt Damon said it as Cole instead of Rollins. So I don't know. This one's tiny and not really important, but my next surprise was that Alejandra in the book is described as having blue eyes and porcelain skin.
Yeah.
It's just, those are just the type of details that don't really matter. It just surprised me. That might have surprised me either way, because she's supposed to be Mexican. Just a really light-skinned Mexican. Penelope Cruz is Spanish anyway. So, next one. Oh, this is the one I already mentioned. I thought of as a happy surprise is that the scene with Dueña Alfonso playing chess, and that she was more of a character.
Oh yeah.
Surprise number 8 on my list was Cole and Rollins suspected that they were going to kill Blevins before they did. I don't know. This might go into my interpretation, but in the movie, I didn't get the feeling that they had any idea that the police were going to kill Blevins. It seemed like they were more shocked by it.
They mentioned it while they were still in the cell, because after John Grady, like in the movie, they don't. You mean in the book they don't know?
No, in the movie.
In the movie, yeah.
Yeah, in the book it seemed like they at least talked about it when they were still in the cell.
Yeah, I think they did in the movie.
Maybe
they didn't show that. Rollins getting interrogated at all, which they didn't talk about in the book. They kind of they showed him getting talked to, but then obviously something happened. They took him and did something, and that they also don't portray in the book. But in the movie, they don't even talk to him. He's being thrown in, and they're taking John Grady out.
Yeah,
and
then
he says the same thing, like they're say whatever
Oh yeah, tell them whatever they want,
because
they're gonna twist it anyway.
So, but when John Grady comes back in, he does have a conversation. He has that same conversation saying, I think we're going to Saltillo. And he's like, what's in Saltillo or whatever. And I don't know. They have that whole conversation, and he says, I think they aim to. They don't want us to. They want to make a deal. And he's like, what kind of deal? This is all in the movie too. And he's like, about Blevins. And he's like, what about Blevins? I think they aim to kill him.
Oh, yeah. I must have just
They do
forgot.
say that in the cell before they leave. So they do have an idea.
Yeah, it was probably just when I was watching the movie, I was more shocked by them actually killing Blevins, and then once I got to the book, I already knew they were going to.
That's a part in the movie that I don't think is shot very well.
When
it's
they
kind of
drag
cheesy
him off.
And yeah,
it's pretty melodramatic.
It's done in old-fashioned like slow motion. That's another thing that I said about this movie. Speaking of that, is it seems kind of old-fashioned for some, for something for a 2000 movie.
Yeah,
it seems like it's like an older Western movie, and maybe that was on purpose.
They probably were going for that. of course, I watched the movie first, so I wasn't thrown off by it, and I do like the melodrama, kind of like a telenovela, like a soap opera.
Right.
It felt fitting to me then,
Yeah,
but then
it's just
the
not,
book is
doesn't match the
definitely
book.
not like that. Yeah.
The book is just, that's what it is, and like, you know, yeah.
Yeah, it's very, like you were saying, the
They
Hemingway
even,
style.
in the
just
movie,
surfaced.
played up the shots when they killed Blevins. They were loud and they flinched.
Oh,
But in
yeah.
the book, he made it, you know, on purpose, saying that they were just a soft little muted pops or whatever, you know. So like that makes it more like the idea that, yeah, this is a big thing, but it's inconsequential. Like learning things, you know, that's what the book is kind of about, is this journey to adulthood or whatever. It's just learning that bad things happen and they just happen. It's not a big thing, you know.
Yeah, like you would expect it to be like that in the movie, but it's just like
but it's just
mundane part of the day almost. Yeah. Let's see. My next surprise was there was so much more in the book that went on in the prison than what was in the movie.
I know, yeah.
That was probably the most where you get more in the book. Cole getting beat up early on. He loses 2 of his teeth and his eye swells shut. They didn't do all that.
Yeah, all the conversation they have about getting beat up, you know, saying like, oh, whatever they're talking about, just keep going, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, which adds a lot more tension to what later happens. And then all the stuff with the Perez character. Yeah, I was thinking maybe he was supposed to be a guy in the movie, but he would just be an unnamed background character. But in the book, that guy Perez he had some power and status in the prison, and Cole tries to negotiate with him to get out. And yeah, that was really good, tense stuff, because Perez is always asking for money, and Cole's like, I don't have any money, and he's like, thinks he's lying that he does have money.
Yeah, they didn't emphasize that very much in the movie, the fact that it seems to be expected that since they're American, that they will buy themselves out. You know,
Perez is like, I know how things work in America. You have someone in your family who's rich. So
the captain, he gives them his little like speech when they are first brought there, that he kind of talks about that.
Yeah.
Like talking about, you're gonna have to make a deal or something, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's a good dimension to the book that's missing.
Are you still on the prison?
Still in the prison. Okay, yeah, the big one was the cafeteria fight scene, because it was intense in the movie the way they did it, but it's so quick.
Yeah.
Where it's just like there's the tension of everyone else leaving and it's just the 2 of them, but then the fight scene is just Matt Damon as Cole, like stabbing him a bunch of times.
I know,
and that's intense.
It is, but it's another one like, you know, when I was watching that, like
the last
duel,
right?
where it's like, why don't you just do it how it's written in the book? It's written well, you know, with the tray.
Like, yeah,
you know,
and that's the best movie action part you can get, is because it's like this fight. Yeah, they're using the trays
and
as
Cole's
shields,
just getting cut the whole
weapons.
time. He hits him a little bit, but then he's like down, almost gonna.
Yeah, you
die,
think he gives up because
you know?
he's slouched against the wall. He's like bleeding. Yeah,
but
and that's when
he like holds up. He even holds him up to get it at his throat, and that's when he stabs him in the heart. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so good because he holds him up. He's like, oh, he's gonna slit Cole's throat, but then he pulls it out, breaks the knife off, twists it in his heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. That so good
even the beginning of that, I think the way they did it in the movie, I kind of understand it. It's almost like a cheesy thing. Like they're trying to play up the fact that he sat down there and then everybody else got up from the table. And there's this guy in the movie that's just this silent like boss of the prison that they play in there. That it's not how it's portrayed in the book at all.
Maybe that was supposed to be Perez.
I don't know, but it's completely different. But in the book, it's just like, he sits down next to the only other person sitting down alone, and then realizes why that person is sitting there alone.
Because he's like, the hired assassin.
This is the assassin, guy. And then he realizes there's no guards in there, and only a couple people are in there. You know, whereas that's like a huge and crowded, you know, in the movie.
And it's the duel scene.
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. So
that guess it doesn't make sense. I mean, in the movie. It doesn't really necessarily make sense in the movie either. Like, they portray it as they're just getting beat up all the time, you know, outside, and then he would just decide to go sit with the people in the cafeteria. He's an outsider.
Why wouldn't he try and go alone somewhere?
He wouldn't, you know, which is why in the book he sat with the only person sitting by themselves, because he's, you know, just trying to find somebody else.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. My last one, actually, my 10th and final surprise from the book, was that it wasn't the old guy from the jail cell that shows up to the sleeping camp.
I know, that to me was
away.
Yeah.
Is that too cheesy
that
for
was
you in the
cheesy
movie?
for me in the movies. It's like, what? It's like, that's not what the book is about. It's not about, like, oh,
if you do good things, it'll come back to you.
Yeah, it's not about that at all. I actually wrote that down specifically, what you said, good things come back to you kind of thing. I said that's probably the biggest complete change from the book because it affects things thematically even.
Yeah, that's true.
Because in the book, the only thing that might reward Cole for anything good that he does is what the judge talks to him about at the end, where he kind of like says he basically says you couldn't have done anything better than you did, and it seems like you did the good things. That was his only reassurance that he got through the whole thing. He's trying to basically do good things through the whole book, but he doesn't get rewarded for them. I mean, he gets rewarded not directly. So like you could say that he's rewarded in a way
because he makes it out alive.
When the what do they call the guys? They come at the end. Is that what they call them?
Hombres del País.
Hombres del País. That's right. When they come and take the captain, it's a good thing because it's like, they kind of at that point he's accepted into the country.
Yeah,
how
into
I
the
read
land,
that. Is like they see him as one of them instead of the other way
around. But then
around.
that's powerful because it happens to be random people that he's never encountered.
Yeah, I think it's more powerful in that way.
Yeah.
And I get why they did it for the movie. It's like a very movie, thing to do.
Yeah.
Like just a typical cheesy.
Yeah, that's the thing
to do.
is that, because I did it backwards the other way, is that I really liked that part in the movie, but I was watching it as telenovela funny because it was also funny when they let the old guy out of jail in the movie, which is a different tone than in the book. Because in the movie it was like setting him free, and the old guy was like, "What?" And then he's like, "Oh, thank you," and then he yells a bunch of curses in Spanish at the captain, and then it switches back and is really nice and is like, "Oh, gracias" to Cole. And I was like, oh, that's funny. So then I thought it was funny when he came back, when the old guy came back to take the captain away. Mm-hmm. But yeah, then after reading the book, you notice the themes are way different, the tone. Mm-hmm. So it does work better. The Hombres del País just come and you think they're going to kill Cole at first, but then they're just like, oh, we're going to take him away. And he's like, who are you?
Yeah.
But that's my last surprise. But that made me think, what you had mentioned about the themes of like bad stuff just happens and it's of no consequence and like things just come and go or whatever. I loved the ending to the book that wasn't in the movie. The final scenes where you get the part from the movie where he goes and meet ups with Rollins again, but that's where the movie ends. And then in the book, Rollins is like, are you going to stay here? We could work. And Cole decides he's just going to keep going. And he just rides off on his horse. Yeah. And, that
also with Blevins' horse still.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Blevins' horse. But, yeah, that's almost like, you would think that would be the riding off into the sunset moment. You could say it's almost like that, but it's definitely not a trope. It's almost a subversion of that because he just keeps riding, but he has nowhere to go. Yeah. He's not victorious. And I really liked the coming and going thing. Made me think of, he's walking on the dust. He's kicking up dust, and then the Native Americans see him, and they just watch him. The way it's described, where it's like they're looking at him, not hatefully, not in admiration. They're just looking at him because he happens to be there, and they know that he's going to be gone when he leaves. And I was like, oh, that's so good. Yeah. And then there's the big oil machines he's looking at because it all started with they're selling the farm off to the oil companies. Mm-hmm. And so, that's just such a good thematic images there at the end. So I could see why you rated the book so much higher than the movie, the way you experienced it. Yeah. Yeah, any other surprises you had, or?
Just a couple differences. I don't know. I guess it was a little surprising that, because it wouldn't have been much to leave it in, that maybe people wouldn't have understood. They didn't tease Blevins about his name at all when they met him. They didn't. They
did in the movie.
But they didn't.
There was just the one part where, I forget what it's called, when Rollins says a thing about 5 pounds of shit or 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag was in the movie.
But weren't they in general talking about
radio host,
all the stuff that he was saying? Yeah, that's what I mean. Is that wasn't his real name?
Yeah, that wasn't in the movie.
Yeah, and like even that's one thing that John Grady tries to do when he's trying to find the owners of Blevins' horse, because he doesn't think that it was actually Blevins' horse. He thinks he stole it before he joined up with them. He goes
trying to find his family or whoever owns
Jimmy Blevins, right?
That's the radio preacher.
The radio preacher Jimmy Blevins.
yeah, I forgot about that. That's totally left out of the movie.
But yeah, it's just another thing for them to doubt about. They doubted that it was Blevins was 16. He said he was 16, I think, right?
They're like, no, you're 12, 13.
Yeah, and
that's not your real name.
That's not his horse. Did they doubt that in the movie? I can't remember.
I don't know. They might not have, or not played it up as much, at least for sure.
Yeah, I already mentioned the Senora Alfonso's big monologue at the end was skipped. And we talked about the prison situation. One little thing that I noticed while I was watching it that seemed weird, that I looked up just to double check, was that after they get let out of the prison, and Rollins is asking John Grady, oh, how did we get let out? And he says it was Senora, the aunt, grand aunt. And Rollins says in the movie, El Senora. And I was like, that seems kind of weird. I mean, he doesn't know Spanish. Rollins doesn't know Spanish, really. Yeah. So it kind of makes sense. But then in the book, he says the Senora, which
makes more sense.
It makes more sense. I mean, I almost get why they changed it, because it's like, oh, people who don't know Spanish know that you put El in front of everything. And
instead of la.
But considering all the other dialogue in the movie that they kept exactly the same, why did they change that?
I know. That almost seems like the things you mentioned of it being cheesier, or that's trying to be a joke, El Senoro or something.
Yeah. Oh, and then so here's this thing. Remember when in the movie when Cole is on the phone talking to Alejandra when they're trying to meet up after he's talked to the aunt. What is this clapping dancing guy? Do you remember that in the movie? This guy after she agrees to meet up with him, he's just there
and he might or might not be real.
Yeah, it seemed like it was he wasn't real. It's just this clapping.
He and then he claps and
he does it like a dance.
It's in slow-mo too.
Yeah, it's like
a weird vision. Heck? I don't know if that's supposed to represent how he feels.
Yeah, I don't know what that's supposed to
forgot. That was so weird.
But that guy's there the whole time watching him on the phone while he's on the phone, and he's smiling, and then he starts to clap. It's really weird.
Yeah, that was super weird. It's almost I would think, or maybe even hope, that that's something that was supposed to be
to something,
or it was supposed to be in there at another point, and they cut it out. Maybe Billy Bob Thornton's original cut is at the beginning they introduce he has an imaginary image whenever he's happy. It's he's happy. Whenever he's sad, that guy's crying or something.
I think I would rate the movie much lower if that was the case throughout the whole thing.
Maybe that's why they cut it out and they just missed one.
I just saw that and I was like, what is this? It didn't even make sense to me in the movie.
Yeah.
And then again, just more difference. The part where he steals the horses back in the movie is different. It's a bigger. There's more people there for the gunfight situation, but also he only takes hostage the captain. But really, in the book, he takes the captain and then goes and finds the I don't know what that other guy is. Some kind of there's the other guy. There's two guys when they take them and kill Blevins. Remember, he's the guy who he isn't able to shoot Blevins, and then the captain says he had to do it.
Yeah.
Which did they talk? They don't mention that in the movie, do they?
I don't think so.
That's in his speech when he takes him to the prison. I think in the book, in the one where the same speech where in the movie he says you got to make a deal. He says a man's got to do. Can't change his mind. That's kind of what he says. It's once a man makes up his mind, he's got to.
That guy
do it.
At least in the book, from what I remember, he was, somehow related to who had the horse, who took the horse, or he was related to the guy that got shot by Blevins.
Yes, I think so. He was the guy who wanted to kill Blevins,
but
and then he couldn't do it.
When he got there,
that guy. So when John Grady goes back to get the horses, he takes the captain and then goes and gets that guy, and then they both go to get the horses. And that's another thing that makes the shootout more tense than it is action packed, because there's the two of them and there's the one guy outside the barn, and then one other guy. There's only two other guys at the ranch that they encounter at that time when he's trying to get the horses out of there. Yeah. And they do the whole thing where he like ties up a rope through the captain's handcuffs behind his back, and then and it's Blevins' horse who gets spooked at gunfire. That's why he does that. And then he like moves and that dislocates the captain's shoulder. All that whole thing, makes it so much more tense. That's why the captain is almost like gonna die too, going through the desert. He's going, traveling, running away, as his hostage, and he like sets his arm back in at some point. Yeah. There's so many of those things in that whole period that are so good.
That reminded me of another one from that whole scene, is when he first goes to get the captain, and he breaks into his office and he's sitting at his desk with the gun, and first the cleaning lady comes in and she's like, oh shit, and he's like, no, just keep going, go sit over there. Well, and that would have been such a good cowboy movie moment, I feel like.
I think so too. You're right. And really, that is, they play it differently in the movie. They go to the cell to let the old guy out. In the book, he really goes to the cell to put the cleaning lady in the cell and leave her there, and just lets the old guy go at that time, and locks the cleaning lady in there. And she basically says, "Yeah, it's all right. Don't worry about it."
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I liked that scene. The way it's just like he's sitting there waiting, and she comes in there first.
All right. I think I only had one kind of other thing that the movie kind of made me realize that I don't know. I didn't catch a lot of it in the book. How much foreshadowing there is in the book, and that Rollins saying he has a bad feeling about Blevins. When they meet him, and his whole thing, which they had in the movie, which is I don't know. I really like it as a good line in general in the book and the movie, that every bad thing that ever happened to him came down to one decision he made beforehand.
This is that decision.
This is that decision.
Yeah. When they're thinking about stealing back the horse.
And it really is. It comes back like way later than that point. But it does. That is what comes back to get them.
Yeah, he's basically saying like, this is a moment where we can do the other thing.
But when I just read through it, I don't.
You don't know the consequences.
I don't know what the consequence is, so I can't. It doesn't seem like a bit. It just seems like something. Yeah, something someone would say.
Yeah, it's just a good line. Like in a moment when you're about to do something kind of sketchy or stupid, you're like, this might be that one stupid thing that really pushes over the edge. And
then I had forgotten when I read through it that Hector Rocha actually asked Cole, he's like, just you two? Like, he only asked if just he and Rollins rode down. He asked specifically, just you two rode down. And then that's later when Senor Alfonso says that you lied, that John Grady lied to him.
You lied to him because he said it was just you two.
And he says, she doesn't say specifically why they lied, which is why I didn't catch it necessarily in the book, because John Grady says, I ain't never lied, or whatever he says. That just seems like a thing he would say. I don't know if that's literally what he said.
Something like that.
I ain't never lied about nothing, or something, but he did, and I forgot about that till I watched. Basically, watching the movie is rereading the book or something.
That's funny because I noticed it the other way around. Because when reading the book, that's when I noticed in the interview, which is in the movie, when Hector de la Rocha's like, asks him like, oh, just you two guys? One of you must be the leader, right?
Yeah.
He's like, we ain't got no leaders. Yeah. In the movie, I thought he was just asking them about them two, like, what's your guys' deal? But then once I was reading the book and I knew everything that happened, I'm like, oh, he knows about Blevins.
So I experienced it the other way.
Yeah.
Right? Because in the book, I don't know that. I don't know that he already knows. And, you find out later that when they got there, he already knew about
it's so much later in
Blevins, and that it was them.
Yeah.
But, and then the other thing that was slightly different is that in the book and in the movie, when Cole, John Grady, and Alejandra meet up for the last time together, she says she had a dream about him. The dream is slightly different in the movie and the book, but essentially that he was dead.
Yeah.
I think in the movie they said he was carried through the streets or something, and in the book he was just dead or something. I don't know. Yeah. They were similar, but in the movie she said in the movie earlier when they were after the dance, she said she had a dream, but I can't tell you yet. And I looked back to see if and that's not in the book.
Yeah, the book, the dream is at the end when they meet up again. It's just like she has the dream and she tells him immediately in the book, right?
Well, no, she's in the book. She says she had a dream long ago.
Oh, but she never brought it up.
But she didn't bring it up at all. Yeah. In the movie, they had her bring it up early.
Yeah,
she had some foreshadowing.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, I had a dream last night. What happened?" And she's like, "I can't tell you."
Yeah. But,
yeah, I wrote that one. I did notice that one.
That was the only thing.
It just didn't stick out to me enough. Yeah, that's the last one. The last thing that I would even think to mention is, it's kind of in the category of like, it doesn't really matter. It's a detail, like Alejandro's supposed to have blue eyes. Mm-hmm. But, you know, or the age thing. There's definitely, you know, they have fake accents. You know what I mean? Because Matt Damon is from Boston, and he does the, sit down over here and everything. I don't know. It didn't take me out of it at all. I don't think it was bad or anything. You know, like some people might complain about...
The accents?
Yeah, accents.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it didn't to me, because I don't think I know a good enough Southern accent or something, you know.
It's just something like, you know, the curse of knowing who an actor is. Yeah. Someone might be like, Matt Damon, you don't have that accent. Or, I mean, I thought that I noticed it a little bit. Most people probably wouldn't, or it's me nitpicking. I feel like I noticed it with Penelope Cruz in the scene when they're at dinner and she gets her very melodramatic crying monologue. It's, I don't know, it's really specific because she's Mexican in the story, but Penelope Cruz is from Spain. But she's also speaking English, but I feel like it sounded like a Spanish accent to me when she speaks English, because she has some of the, in Spain they do the, corazón.
Yeah, no,
she kind of has that lisp.
Now that you mentioned that, she does have a little bit of that lisp quality, like it's being hidden.
Yeah, so like even when she's speaking English, in that one, when she's really getting into the emotions, I noticed she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, like almost. Yeah. You hear the Spanish accent, and it just, for a moment, it kicks me out. Mm-hmm. Partly just knowing that she's Spanish. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Do you want to get into anything else about it, or final recommendations?
I think we can go to our final recommendations.
Okay. Conclusions and final recommendations. Welcome back if you skipped the spoiler part. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say having read the book first, and how good it was, and just the book is the better of the two, in my opinion, no matter what order you might watch them in, or read them in. So I would suggest read the book first, so that you get that whole experience, not tarnished or swayed by having watched the movie. So I would say read the book first, and then watch the movie.
Watch the movie, yeah. Mine's going to be really similar, even though I experienced it the other way around. I was surprised by how faithful of an adaptation the movie is in ways. I enjoyed the movie. I think the things that are different were because it's a different genre. Movies are a different thing than a book. However, I would still say read the book first. Definitely read the book first. Since I watched the movie first, I wasn't on the edge of my seat wanting to know what happens next in the book. So I think you'll have a better reading experience and enjoy the story if you read the book first. And then check out the movie. You might enjoy the movie more, too.
I think this is the first time, too, where one of us rated the second thing that we experienced higher than the first, which is you with the book rating the book higher than the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Previously...
So, yeah, we were thinking that maybe...
Whichever one you read...
We'll always like first. The one we experienced first. Yeah, but this one... I liked the book a little more, even though I experienced it second. Okay, so we're going to average out our scores. You want to start with the book?
Yeah, let's go with the book.
I gave the book an 8.1. You gave it a 9.3.
Yep.
All right, so yeah, the book, All the Pretty Horses, we average out to an 8.7. The book is an 8.7. The movie, I gave an 8. You gave a 6?
6.
Just a 6?
Well, that's easy. 7.
Yeah. 7.
Which is pretty good.
That means good. Yeah. To me, that's
3.5 stars.
Yeah.
Kind of slightly above middle of the road.
Yeah. Good, not super good.
Yeah.
Definitely not great. That's pretty good. So how did that compare to the book? Had an 8 on Goodreads, basically 8.2.
Yeah. So
And
we think it's a slightly underrated
book, yeah. With an 8.7.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, obviously it won awards. It's kind of acclaimed, but still underrated according to us.
Mm-hmm.
The movie we gave a 7, and so we say it's underrated movie
it's
by a lot.
Very underrated movie. Actually.
The critics gave it a 32%, which is like less than half of what we give it, about half of what we give it, and then 42 general audience score. Underrated movie. All right, welcome to the bonus round. We're going to talk about our running list, how we rank all these books in terms of our averages.
So, the difference here, we have All the Pretty Horses has made the top of our list, the book.
The book All the Pretty Horses is on top of the charts right now. Top
above,
of the charts.
above Under the Skin, with, All the Pretty Horses at 8.7, Under the Skin, the book at 8.35.
Pretty close.
Then followed by Under the Skin, the movie at 7.5, and then All the Pretty Horses movie is still at number 4.
That made it high on the list above both Last Duels.
Yeah, at 7.0.
The thing we noticed last time, right, is that the book is always above its movie.
Yeah, we still think the book is always better than the movie.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of our averages,
the
book's always better than the movie so far. Again, we don't have a lot of data, so this could change. There'll be some outliers, I predict. All right, that's where we're at right now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Because next month. Next month we're going to talk about The Taming of the Shrew by William Shakespeare.
And the adaptation, 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah. So if you're reading and watching along at home, try and read this play, The Taming of the Shrew by William Shakespeare, and then check out the movie, 10 Things I Hate About You, or watch it and then read it. Who knows which side you're taking.
You want to choose, or only read one of them.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. Or watch one, or whatever.
What we're doing is I'm going to read first this time, since we're switching, so I'm going to read Taming of the Shrew first.
And I watched 10 Things I Hate About You back in the day, so
it's a rewatch.
It's a rewatch for me. And
this is actually a reread for me, and then we're going to switch because we haven't experienced the other, so that'll be interesting. Stay tuned. And again, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you enjoy the next one. Don't forget to like this video. Comment your opinions below. What did you think of All the Pretty Horses, the book or the movie? Give us suggestions what we should do for future episodes if you want. And hit the subscribe button if you haven't, because we're going to keep making more episodes. Hit the bell icon so you get notifications. You don't miss any of our new episodes. Maybe on the screen now there's other videos that we have recommended to you, right?
Yep.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Next month.